In the heart of Trinidad, amid rhythmic beats of tassa drums and towering tajas, the Hosay procession tells a 150-year-old story of faith, resistance, and remembrance. Hosay, brought to the Caribbean by East Indian immigrants, commemorates the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad in the Battle of Karbala. The battle centered around the line of succession of the Prophet Muhammad.
But in 1884, San Fernando would become the center of a massacre that would alter the history of Hosay, and one it never truly recovered from.
This was not a riot. It was a massacre. It was a whole-scale massacre.
Historians say Hosay was observed in Trinidad as far back as 1847, though there are differing accounts. Dr. Satnarayan Balkaransing has spent the last 30 years writing this historical book on Hosay. The opening chapters show how both Hindus and Muslims participated in the processions. The Hindus, he says, felt a special connection.
It identified to a great extent, the Hindus identified, that it represented that which the Hindus had known, where Sri Ram of the Ramayana, right, was denied his ascent to the throne, right? And this is exactly what has happened with Muharram. The grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, right, Hussein, was denied access to the caliphate.
The Africans would join the commemoration as well. They brought Islam with them from that continent. By the 1880s, riots and strikes gripped the nation as indentured laborers confronted the plantation owners and the British overlords. It coincided with the Canboulay riots. By the early 1880s, there were dozens of processions in San Fernando alone. The political leadership feared where Hosay would go.
One, it was instability, but they saw it as a threat to identity, Indian identity. Plus, Islam had already come to Trinidad, and it had come to Trinidad not from India, but from Africa.
In 1884, Hosay reached a boiling point.
They were advised that there was a court order that prevented them from coming on the streets. A man called Suku decided, we are going to fight that. We are going to go to court. They went to court asking for permission to bring their tajas and their processions to cross San Fernando. The court said no.
The organizers of Hosay in San Fernando would ignore the court order and move ahead with the procession. The British overlords responded by sending in armed forces from Port of Spain, backed up with military from 2 British ships that were anchored outside San Fernando. On October 30th, 1884, 15 estates headed into San Fernando in a procession a mile long. 3 pivotal moments would be etched in history.
The first shooting took place at 2:30. Right. A riot act was read. The processioners couldn't hear it because you're talking about Tassa, you're talking about Gatka, you're talking about they screaming, Ya Hussein, Ya, Hassan, Hussein, Hassan, Hussein. So you can't hear, this being said, a riot act being read to you in English.
An hour later, at 3:30 p.m., another procession was headed into San Fernando, this time from Monrepo. For another time, the armed forces read the riot act. But this time, it would be different.
They tried to stop them. They didn't stop. And they at 20, between 20 and 25 paces, he shot straight into their bellies, directly in front of them. And they used Henry Martini Snider rifles. Snider rifles, it was the first time they had used in Trinidad buckshot loaded rifles, so that when the shots came out of the rifles, they scattered, right? And that had a devastating effect.
In Pointe-a-Pierre, where another group was heading into San Fernando, armed forces confronted them as well.
Superintendent Givlan spoke to them, stop that group that was coming in from Pointe-a-Pierre area. And he told them, look, they have been shooting at 2:30 and 3:30. Please do not proceed into San Fernando. Throw your tajas into the Guaracara River right here and go back home.
When the smoke had cleared, 18 people were recorded dead, 14 Hindus and 4 Muslims. Dr. Balkaran Singh recorded their names in his book, but he says we will never know the real number of casualties.
Of these 2 shootings, as I said, 18 people dead and 106 injured. That's the authorities' figures. But we don't know how many people went to the hospital, went back to their estates, went back to their ajupas, died in the process, right? Because they were shot at, right? But there is no documented evidence as to how many actually died.
The British would launch an inquiry into the massacre, but Reverend John Morton, a name synonymous with the Presbyterian Church in Trinidad, would make a striking intervention.
He gave evidence and he said this was good. The Indians were behaving badly.
Nothing emerged from the inquiry, but according to Dr. Balkaran Singh, the massacre took the breath out of Hosay, and there would be long-standing impacts for decades to come. Authorities restricted processions out of major cities and towns, and the manner in which it was celebrated was watered down.
After the massacre, there is no evidence that Hosay was ever commemorated in San Fernando. It continued in the other plantations, but not in San Fernando.
It would never be quite what it was. Thereafter, many East Indians converted to Christianity. Hosay was held on the peripheries of towns and cities. The shields and swords disappeared. The numbers dwindled, but it hung on through history.